Oh my goodness, it's morning, 8 o'clock, and I'm telling you, I don't typically wake up ready to go at 7 every day. So this has been a challenge for me, and I wonder if it is for you too. Welcome to my Facebook page. This is Brave Writers Facebook page. I'm Julie Bogart, and every day this month, we are reading from my book, A Gracious Space. This is the fall edition. I realize this is backwards. I have no power over Facebook. That said, we are reading, and it looks to me like Vicky was the first one today. We should give a shout out to the first person every day. Yay, Vicky. Hi, Bridget and Keely and Stephanie. Thank you. I know, aren't these roses gorgeous? Those were a gift for me, and I am enjoying them every morning. Yeah, it's a gorgeous morning here in Ohio. Hi, Leslie. So, for those of you who are new, make sure you mention in the comments that this is your first time so I can say a special hello to you. After we are done, I go back and I read all the comments that are made during the broadcast. And if you're new and you tell me you are, I will make sure to say hello. I also like knowing where you're writing in from. So if you're in New Zealand or California or the middle of Oklahoma, please leave the name of your state and or city and or country so I can see where we are all checking in from as well. It's been pretty cool. We've had people from Alaska, from the UK, from New Zealand, from Australia. That's pretty fun for me, just to see how far the reach is of our Brave Writer community. Good morning, Bonnie and Dusty and Ashley and Katie. See, there's Western Australia right there. Vicky says, the shout out reminds her of Romper Room. Of course I watched that. And of course you just sit there hoping they say your name. And of course there were a million Julies. So they said my name, but it wasn't necessarily me. Yeah, that's hilarious. Rhode Island, Missouri, Texas, that's perfect. So good to see everybody. So thank you. Thanks for joining me every day. These readings are great. Tomorrow's reading's super duper short, and that's kind of good because tomorrow I go running with my running partner. So I will be doing that one earlier than usual. Normally I get up and I do this at 8, but tomorrow, those of you who are trying to hop on live, you need to be ready by 7:30. And I will do the reading for tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning. All right, so shall we get started? Looks like we've got a nice group all checked in. I'm going to check my hair one more time. I'm going to have a sip of tea. Get your tea. Let's all have a tea break. Ready? Oh, so good. Oh my gosh, it's going to be cold by the time I'm done reading. I'm going to have one more sip. Bathing my tired voice. Okay, here we go. Woo! La 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 la. All right, I'm ready. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, today is day 11. Creating aha moments. The best way to learn is when an aha moment is created. These usually come spontaneously when a connection is made and the little mental light bulb flashes. You can facilitate that moment though. It's not purely random. Here are some ways to flick the light on. Cross-pollinate. As you make lunch today, ask your kids to help. When you're ready to pull ingredients from the pantry, ask them to assemble a lunch that tells you the story of fill in the blank. The story could be the novel you are reading, the history you are studying, the scientific discovery you are learning about. For instance, suppose you're reading about the solar system. Your kids might use star cookie cutters to create star-shaped cheese or sandwiches and moon slices of apple. Name the stars, arrange them in a constellation on your plate, compare them. Find round fruits and vegetables to represent planets. Could a pomegranate seed represent Pluto, and a tomato Mars, and a big honeydew melon Jupiter? What foods do astronauts eat? Look it up online and see if you can make a facsimile. Talk about space and travel and the solar system, all while making lunch. Maybe put it off till nighttime and do it for dinner. You could use a telescope or just observe the stars through a window. If you're reading about pioneers and Native Americans, you can make 2 lunches to choose from. Pick foods for each. Talk about how you eat with or without utensils, at a low or high table, off a plate or a rock or a plank of wood. Approximate the habits, the eating habits and the foods and the setting as you go about making lunch. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just include everyone's input and do it together. Use Google to help you. And I'll just add, it doesn't have to be to scale to make a point. Use your bodies. Can your bodies be used to mirror punctuation as you read? What body movements can you use to signal exclamation points? A big jump, a hand clap, a high five. Read a series of exclaiming sentences, and every time you get to the end, do the body movement. High fives all around. I feel like I need to do a high five. There we go. For commas, can you dip your head, drop open your jaw, and take a big breath? How do you approximate pause? So there were commas in this sentence, so let's try it for a moment. For commas, can you dip your head, drop open your jaw, take a big breath. Recite facts on the stairs. Whoever is answering gets to go down a stair for a right answer and up a stair when they miss. Keep going until you all get to the bottom. Collaborate. If someone helps another to remember, they both get to go down a stair. Throw a frisbee or kick a soccer ball or toss pillows while reviewing times tables. We used to use a lacrosse stick, and we would just lacrosse throw the ball back and forth. Create a Google scavenger hunt. I love this idea. Make a list of questions and send your kids to the computer to answer them. Can be competitive. Whoever gets done first wins a small prize. Can be collaborative. When all questions are answered by any and all together, everyone gets ice cream. Answers can be handwritten or copied and pasted to a Word doc or written on a big whiteboard. Up and down from the computer to whiteboard, each person with their own color marker, creating a long list of answers and facts. Set a timer and get them all answered before the timer dings. You are not in school. You do not have to sit at desks. Lunch doesn't have to be a break from learning. Get the light bulbs turned on. Takes energy. Create it. Use it. Quote of the day. Hop off the straight and narrow when you can and should take the winding paths. From Stacy Charter. Sustaining thought. Mix things up a bit. Turn lunch into a culinary history lesson. Combine exercise with a grammar and punctuation review. You and your kids can make school whatever you want it to be. What freedom. All right, so let's talk about this for a minute. I've done most of these, you know? Like, I don't tell you stuff that we haven't done in my own school or my own homeschool experience. And also, some of the ideas come from our instructors in Brave Writer. So for example, the scavenger hunt through Google, that comes from Suzanne Barrett's Family Workshop for Shakespeare. She has a big scavenger hunt that she has everyone take. And they run around the internet looking things up to get to know Shakespeare. Why give your kids all the answers before you even begin? It's like the punchline of the joke before the joke got told. And just to further deepen your commitment to this mystery, surprise, risk, and adventure, when I taught at Xavier University last year, this year I'm too busy, so I'm not doing that, but last year I was an adjunct professor, and we used the whiteboard all the time in class. In fact, when we were together with the other professors and having a department meeting, we were all talking about ways to enhance the classroom experience, combining it with technology, because there's this big war in the university level about whether or not you allow your students, I think of them as friends, to allow your students to use their iPhones or their smartphones in the middle of a class. And I made the point that adults use their smartphones all day, every day. They use them at dinner. They use them in conversation. They use them to verify a fact. And so instead of a battle of ignorance anymore, people can actually find out information. When someone says to you, that can't be true, you don't have to argue about it. You can go look it up now and find out if it's true. So why wouldn't we also give our kids, our students, the chance to be able to contribute truths things they can look up and find out. So one of the things we used to do in my class is I would have them do research around whatever a concept was, and we would do it in small groups, and then I would have a group representative go to the board, and they had their own columns, and they would write what they discovered on the whiteboard. You know what that did in the classroom? It made them active. They were paying attention. The smartphone wasn't something they were scrolling to watch Facebook while I was droning on lecturing. They were using it as a tool. They were engaging their bodies, and they were demonstrating the things they had researched in a public way. When you're doing something in public, you're more committed. Your own reputation is on the line. So that same kind of strategy can work in your own family, but be relaxed about it. This isn't school, so you don't have to turn it into some kind of like formalistic lecture lesson. Melissa Wiley, good friend of Brave Writer, good friend of mine, children's author, the fabulous blogger at Here in the Bonnie Glen, can't recommend her highly enough. She has a whiteboard that she keeps in her kitchen, and she likes to put like the day's routine or activities or things they're going to look forward to on that whiteboard. And somewhere along the way, the kids started discovering that they could erase words in that list and put in their own words. And so by the end of the day, the board is just a whole bunch of puns and rewritten sentences that are no longer representative of what the original was. But how great is that? How fabulous is that wordplay going on in their family all day, every day? It's a way of engaging learning, and it's a completely different idea than sticking to a plan, right? Like you can get the plan up there. Everybody's seen the plan. Why can't you now erase it and play with it and turn it into something that explores language? When we used to do copywork and dictation, and I was trying to demonstrate how to use punctuation, I started noticing that my kids, the punctuation meant nothing to them. It's just little marks on a page. And if you've ever read a foreign language that uses marks for vowels or doesn't have punctuation, you will start to realize just how irrelevant those marks seem on our pages. For example, in Arabic, there's no commas. There are no commas. There's really no periods. Like it's just, there's no uppercase, lowercase. There's just, breaks between the words. I mean, it's very differently punctuated. It's not like English. So we can start by acknowledging that these marks on the page have meaning, but we have to train ourselves to recognize what the meaning is. And one of the ways that kids bond meaning to their memories is through their bodies. We're so used to all this abstraction that lives in our minds as adults. But when you're a child, abstraction is really hard to connect to. It doesn't resonate with the brain. The brain is not in the abstraction phase of development. So here's what I would do. I would read a passage and I would hold the book in my hand and I would stand up and I would read. It's not easy. I'm going to tell you this right now. It will feel awkward and you won't do it perfectly. So don't do it and say, God, is this what Julie did? Yeah, it's exactly what I did. Okay. So here's what I would do. I would read along, and I would walk while I'm reading. And if I got to a comma, I dipped my whole body and then I kept reading. And when I got to the end of a sentence where there was a period, I brought both feet together and I would stand for a longer moment. And I always made sure that my voice dipped down so that it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like a period, right? So that's what I would do. I would read, comma, read, period. So then we started playing with it. We're like, well, what do we do when we get to an exclamation point? So in our family, you jump. That's what you do. You get to the exclamation point, you jump. If you get to a semicolon, how are you going to image that compared to a comma? It's a little longer than a comma, little shorter than a period. It has to show connection. I'm not even going to tell you how we did that. I want you to think about it. Come up with something that works in your family. We did finger quotes for dialogue quotes. So think about ways that you can represent. What will you do for a question mark? Raise an eyebrow, make a shape, cock your head to the side. Start to put physical movement with abstraction. That's why we do the same thing with the times tables. If we're going to do rote memory, let's at least have a physical activity. Throwing the frisbee, tossing the lacrosse ball, kicking a soccer ball back and forth, jumping a rope. There is something about that kinesthetic connection that really helps kids to stay on track, to not get lost in their own thoughts while they're also trying to pull in this abstraction. I love to tell this one really cute story about my daughter Johanna. I'm going to have a sip of my hot tea before I tell it. So hold on. Already not hot enough. My kids, they think I must have like an iron tongue because I can drink very hot liquid. And the second it's not burning my tongue, I'm like, that's not hot enough. Okay, so here is one of the things that we did with my daughter Johanna around multiplication tables. I was not good at them as a kid. I have a long story about that I'll save for another time, but suffice to say, I didn't get it. I didn't know that 2 times 2 meant 2 2s added together. I didn't realize that 7 times 8 meant either 7 8s or 8 7s. Like, that never grounded for me, I'm ashamed to say, until I was in my 30s teaching Noah. Can you even believe this? Like, I went my whole life without really getting how multiplication works, even though I passed my math classes. I took a college math class because I worked so hard to memorize. And to this day, memorization has not been my friend with multiplication. 7 times 8, I still am never quite sure. I think it's 56, but I always think it's 54. And that, I think I'm right this time. I think because I've told this story so many times, I think I now know that it's 56. But if it's 54, I apologize. And that is because I don't totally get it. I don't totally have it. I've survived. I run a business. I use numbers. I have quilted. I can bake and cook. I know how to do an Excel spreadsheet a little tiny bit, but I don't really understand math. So when I was trying to teach these times tables to my kids, Cuisinart rods. I mean, those were the best things ever. They're these beautiful colored rods that are centimeters squared, and they go from 1 all the way up to 10, and you can build all kinds of beautiful examples. And that was the dawn of me getting it. But weirdly, Johanna did not like the Cuisinart rods. I don't know why, maybe because I liked them so much. So I was on this wonderful Charlotte Mason email list back in the 90s, and somebody talked about doing what she called Seashell Math, which meant that you get to write down you get to put the times tables in clusters based on seashells. So they have something tangible that they like to hold. Well, I lived in Southern California, had a huge jar of seashells. I thought, perfect idea. But I also had 4 other kids. And so I didn't have time to sit down and show Johanna exactly what to do. We had already done Cuisinart rods. I had already explained 2 times 2 equals 4 means 2 2s. A 2 here, a 2 here, and it equals 4, right? So I gave her this big jar and I said, let's do seashell math. You create the 2s, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, all the way up to 2 times 10, while I'm, changing a diaper, feeding a toddler, getting Noah started with whatever he's doing, helping Jacob read, right? Like, that's your life, and that's my life. So I left her alone on the living room floor with the seashells to try and get this done. I go away, I come back 15 minutes later, oh, she's done it all right. She's got a perfectly shaped 2 out of shells, a perfectly shaped X out of shells, another perfectly shaped 2 out of shells, an equal sign, and a 4, all made from shells. Did she understand the concept of 2 times 2? No. She understood the abstraction. She thought she was just reproducing just the way I did, that these were concepts that lived on a page, that they were shapes I had to memorize in a certain sequence. I had to sort the 2 from the X, from the 2, from these 2 parallel lines from the 4. And I had to memorize the shape and the look of that. That's what multiplication was for me. And here was my daughter right in front of me, showing me the exact world I had lived in second, third, fourth grade. So I cracked up immediately and I said, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. The shells look great. But here's what I had in mind. And then we sat down and we did it together on the floor with the shells. And we started piling them next to each other and then grouping, and then piling next to each other and grouping, and then counting them individually in our hands. And then we did it with M&Ms. We did it with lima beans, because it's not seashells and it's not Cuisinart rods. It's all things can be multiplied together. It's not these abstract symbols on a page that have to be memorized in a certain order in order to function in math. It's actually living inside the concept and giving it body, right? Experiencing it, exploring it. So, as you look ahead, think about ways to get really practical with your kids. And it's gonna look like making lunch together and thinking about lunch differently. You know, when we read Farmer Boy, who hasn't read Farmer Boy? If you haven't, go read it. It's a great book by Laura Ingalls Wilder. When we read Farmer Boy, what is the favorite chapter in that book? Pretty much every child I've ever met, it's the farm breakfast. Because we have a poverty of breakfast in the suburbs. We eat half a bagel. We pour some cereal in a bowl. You know, that's what we do. But not on a farm. On a farm, they have apple pie and ham and eggs and potatoes for breakfast. They have all kinds of foods, including dessert, what is typically dessert. So can you read that book without having a Farmer Boy breakfast at some point in your life? So of course we had to do it. And the dad had to be home, and we had to have pie, ham, eggs, potatoes, the whole 9 yards. It was a fabulous morning. We had lots of syrup, because you get to put syrup on everything when you have a Farmer Boy breakfast. So that's the way to start thinking. When we studied the solar system, we were living on a street with other homeschool families. This was one of the greatest seasons of my life. There were a variety of homeschool families on our street. At 1.5, we lived in these tiny condos with no backyards, so the only way we could all hang out together was to get out into the common area and have picnics. So we did. We were in Southern California. You could do that nearly every day. But here's what would happen. One of us would dial the phone and call the other and say, hey, we're reading about the solar system and we need to approximate the distances. Can you meet me outside in 10 minutes? And they'd be like, yep. We'd all get outside and we'd make one person be the sun, and then we would just start backing the kids up. And of course, Pluto is like miles and miles away, so Pluto couldn't even be in our orbit, right? We had to let them understand these distances, and we did it with their bodies, and we admitted that it was an imperfect example. But do you know the impact it makes on a child to have the sun be at the end of the cul-de-sac and to have the farthest planet you can include be so far away you can't see the child, like they're at the other end of the street, like past the trees? You know, you send your oldest child there. Like, do you know what I'm saying? That is so different than just looking at it in a book. And it paves the way for that moment years later when one of your kids wants the telescope and shows you Saturn, which happened to me. Middle of the night, 4 a.m, he's got the telescope lined up. The entire family is outside. It's freezing cold. Nobody wants to be awake at 4 a.m, but Jacob wants to, so we all get up. And one at a time, we put our eye on that little lens, and I saw the rings. And I wept, because until that moment, Saturn lived in a book for me. Oh, sure, I believed the truth that it existed, but it didn't live in my own experience as real till I saw it through that telescope. And I literally, the words that came out of my mouth were, oh my God, the books are true. Because there is something about going from belief in to direct experience. I call it encounter. Encounter is what changes lives. Encounter. You know, you can read about another culture. You can read about history. You can read about space. But until you've met it in person and it's impacted you on some physical level, you have not been overwhelmed by it. Encounter is an overwhelm of the entire system. You can control what you read. You can control the impact of that information. It's why you can read about Thailand, but until you go to Thailand, you have no idea about Thailand. Being in Thailand changes you. Reading about it entices you. You can read about a perspective, but until you've met a person who embodies that perspective, you've never really known the perspective. This is why we have to be so careful with what we assert that we know simply because we've read something. Reading is an introduction. Encounter changes you. Someone says, where can we go dig for dinosaur bones? Well, guess what? I can tell you where to go. Go to the La Brea Tar Pits in Los Angeles. Go there. It's a completely different experience than seeing dinosaur bones inside of a book. Absolutely. So you can be threading, I use this image a lot. I wish I had one down here. You can be threading beads on a string for your homeschool. Do you know what I'm talking about? Homeschool is not the gold necklace. All the chains are perfectly linked and shiny. That's not what it is. Homeschool is, you know, it's a cord going around your neck, okay? And what you're doing is each day you are threading a bead. Each moment that creates the aha, that builds a memory, that makes an association, those are the beads on your homeschool string. And that's what you're going to remember. You're not going to remember all the crud on the string, all the places where it didn't work and the science experiment failed and the kids didn't love your brilliant idea and they forgot all their times tables after perfectly doing them with you in the backyard with a Frisbee. That is not the thing that's going to stay with you. You're going to have lots of moments and days just like that. And then you're going to make the solar system with your best friend's kids. And you're going to remember that. And that is a bead on the string. And years later, when you visit the solar system again, because it circles around as everything does, you're going to remember, oh, we read about it in a book. Oh, we acted it out. Oh, we read poetry about the solar system. Oh, remember when we made cheese cutout stars and half moon apple slices and had a silly party in the middle of the night? Oh, here's a telescope. There's Saturn. Oh my God. Right? Like that's how it works. Big bead on the string, that moment. So that's how it works. You don't have to get them to understand everything the first time they meet it. Give them a chance to make the acquaintance, get to know it, hear about it, and circle around. The second encounter is always better than the first because of familiarity. The first is maybe interesting, sometimes fabulous, but second meetings create connection. It's why I suggest that when you go to an art museum, you go buy, the little postcard pack before you go in. Flip through the 10 best paintings in the gift shop before you walk into this overwhelming, massive building. And look at those paintings on the postcards. Talk about them. Find out the person who created them. Give every kid a chance to hold one card. Now you have a mission. Go into that museum looking for those paintings. Because when you see them, guess what? Second encounter. Only the second encounter is with the original, not with the postcard. So now your appreciation has the capacity to grow, to expand, to be fulfilled. Anticipation, it creates fulfillment. But if you just walk in, you got kids, you're telling them you're not allowed to run, the stroller kids got to stay in the stroller, you're going to go look at Monet, nobody knows who Monet is, they have no idea what Impressionism means, you tell them all this information the kids don't need. Well, Impressionism happened in the late 1800s as a reaction to the development of the camera. It's like, what kid cares about any of that? What they care about is, ooh, these colors are pretty. Oh, she looks like a pretty girl. I want to dress like her. Oh, they're having a party. Look at that guy. He's really gross. That's what they care about. And if you can get that going on a little bit on the postcard, imagine what they'll feel when they're holding the card here and they're looking at the painting there, and it's big and the colors are more vibrant and you can identify textures. Now you got something. Now you got something. And if you've just looked at this fabulous Van Gogh with all the color and saying questions like, is his skin actually green? Why do you think Van Gogh chose to use green to represent his skin? Is this a believable look? Does this remind you of a picture or no? Is it like a photograph or no? And then you're like, well, let's now look at this Van Gogh right next to it. Are they similar? Are they different? Because you've paved the way for a relationship. You've created a connection that they can make meaningful. Does this make sense? We talk about this stuff all the time in Brave Writer, all scattered throughout our products, on the website. The purpose of this kind of enriched education is this. You are transformed to the degree that you can own the information that someone is giving you. You are transformed to the degree that you can own the information someone's giving you. So the goal cannot be to pass a test, to get the answers right, to simply do the work. That can't be the goal. That's not the education. The reason you love homeschooling as an adult is because you're owning some of this information for your own possession for the first time. You're actually having the experience I'm talking about. You've already encountered this stuff in 12 years of school or 16 or 18. And now, at your own pace, with your mature mind, you're having your third, fourth, fifth encounter and it's suddenly clicking and it's becoming your own possession. So you know what life is between kindergarten and the end of your bachelor's? It is a series of meaningful or not meaningful introductions. And if the introductions are meaningful and create some kind of serendipity, some kind of connection, the next encounter will be with an open spirit. But if the first introduction creates pain, strife, anxiety, fear, what happens when that resurfaces the next time? More fear, more anxiety, more pain, not open-heartedness, not a willingness to grow and seek out more information. And that's exactly your task, is to keep creating soft landings for new encounters with information, with story, with calculation, with writing, with knitting, with cooking, with playing soccer. It's all of it. Life is all one big ball. It's all of it together. Does that make sense? Awesome. All right, let me take a little look here. Can you create a pocket big juicy conversation guide? Well, you know what's interesting? You will have big juicy conversations as you allow yourself to be transformed by what you're reading and studying and learning. So try to think less about your kids. I know that sounds backwards, like, oh, shouldn't I always be thinking about my kids? But what if you think about yourself? For example, it was my own thought process about punctuation that made me turn it into something kinesthetic. It was the feeling that I had never really considered these marks on the page. And I was watching my children and I wondered, well, how are they going to get connected to these marks? And I think that's the question you need to ask yourself. How am I going to create these connections Because as I'm encountering things that I've already studied, how is it that they're coming to life for me? And how can they come to life for my children? That's really the question of all education. And as you ask that question, you will have a big, juicy conversation. You will be able to say, well, how do we think about this? Like, Pluto's really far. I don't even know how to comprehend the number of miles. How could we play a game that helps us get that? That's a big, juicy conversation. It's not a series of predetermined questions. It's the real ones you're having in the context of your family. And you're getting your kids on your team. You're not doing education to your children. You're not doing a conversation to your children. You're actually having a conversation, right? So if you're watching a movie, it's not just about getting them to use literary analysis vocabulary in the context of a movie. It's like, oh my gosh, why do you think Ursula has such a funny big laugh? Is she funny? Do we trust her right now? Is her humor actually funny? Who thinks Ursula is funny? That seems weird that this really evil character is laughing so much. Gosh, are there other evil characters that laugh? Why do evil characters get to laugh? Does anyone laugh with them? That's a big, juicy conversation. Pay attention, notice, start asking those kinds of connection questions. That's how it works. That's how it works. Yes. Okay. We went more than a half hour. I don't like to go more than 30 minutes. So if you've got more questions, post them in this thread. By the way, yesterday we opened registration for a free webinar that I'm going to give about the Writer's Jungle, and then quickly flooded the registrations. I think we're like somewhere around 800, and I only have 100 slots. So we are in the process of negotiating with our webinar provider to make it a much bigger room so many, many more of you can be in. I will announce whatever number that turns out to be. There will be a replay, so if for some reason the live people can't make it, maybe we will send it to you on replay. We're still working this out. I can't promise anything exactly yet. I did not anticipate this size of a response, which tells me this was a big need. So we will certainly want to do it again if this one goes well. What I thought was going to happen is that, a few people who hadn't bought the Writer's Jungle yet and a couple who wish they had some help starting it would sign up. What I didn't realize is that there's a lot of interest always in the Writer's Jungle. So I look forward to working this out so that it serves the majority of the community and all who want the information that I will be providing. So do not worry, we will make sure that we can figure it out. Hey, look at that. Mary says a subscribe button showed in her feed in case anyone else doesn't get Facebook Live notifications. Hoping this will do it. So if you see a subscribe button, definitely click on it because it is wonderful to have you here live every morning. And we will do this again tomorrow. For those who missed the beginning of this show, let me just remind you, I will be on earlier tomorrow. So poor West Coasters, unless you're up nursing your babies, I will not be able to see you live. For the East Coast, we will be doing this at 7:30 in the morning because I'm going running and I have to drive, and so I need to make sure that I get this done before I leave my house. So have a fabulous, fabulous Tuesday. I will see you back here tomorrow. Tomorrow's is very short, actually, so it will be a quick one. And thank you for joining me. So live honestly, write bravely, and learn collaboratively with your kids. Have a fantastic day. Mwah.